Hi, we are the Good Ship Illustration and we run online courses to help illustrators and image makers navigate a creative career. We are Tanya,
Katie
and Helen. We have about 70 years experience between us, each of us working in a different area of illustration.
Welcome to Message in a Bottle, our new podcast answering your questions. You can send your messages to goodshipillo@gmail.com and title it Message in a Bottle so we know what it's about. Welcome to this episode of Message in a Bottle. Today we've got something a little bit different. It's kind of a mixture, a pick and mix of a few different questions. So we'll get stuck straight into the first one. This person asks, how do I know if I'm an illustrator or not? I keep feeling that I'm being pulled in an abstract direction and I don't know what to do with the ideas or the work I produce. Is it more of a fine art thing, or could abstract work be applied to illustration?
I felt I had a real affinity to this question. Maybe that's because I came from a fine art background and went through a bit of an abstract period as well, and not knowing how you could use it. But then I realised that there's a kind of midway point between design and illustration, and you may fall into that bracket. You're creating textures, you're creating backgrounds. They don't have to be figurative to express anything specific, because the design industry has a great need for these kind of just beautiful stuff. You don't have to be having some kind of conceptual idea and illustrating it. It's enough that maybe you're developing really luscious textures, or you have a great colour sensibility, and there is a space for that. I think you've just got to put them up there and use them.
And not worry too much about the labels.
Yeah,
Like what you're calling yourself.
Because it could be exactly what people are looking for. Someone commissioned me this week to do something very similar to what you're talking about. They want imagery for an app. And if you think about the main buttons and fields in any app, they're the same geometric shapes. But they wanted to humanise it. So that could be the shape isn't a rectangle, the shape is offset. Perhaps it has a hand-drawn edge, or it's got an interesting colour, or it's made of an interesting texture. If you were commissioned to do that, to cut out some circles and some squares from your lovely textures and scan them in, and then they became the fields within an app or in app design, that is a design activity. So you are probably more of a design illustrator, or somewhere that falls in the middle. Also, it sounds slightly like textiles as well. There's definitely areas in applied and commercial art for what you're doing, and you may not be able to at this point name it, but put the work up there and get it seen.
Yeah, I imagine if you put that on a website, a beautiful folio full of abstract work, you'll find out who your clients are, won't you?
Yeah.
You might have clients from a few different areas of illustration. But I would put it out, I wouldn't try and change. If that's what's really exciting, then make the best work you can like that and put it on your website.
Yeah, if it feels good, keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You say next, when I'm not thinking of abstract images, the main thing that's appealing to me is lettering. The main issue is, what can I do with my lettering work? I have no training or knowledge of graphic design, so what else is out there for colourful, sometimes weirdly shaped and layered text? That is a huge market. There's so many people whose entire career consists of lettering and hand lettering. So if you were to Google hand script or hand lettering illustrators, you'll find there's a massive field there waiting for you. I mean, someone like Marion Duchaz is a good example to show how just the very simple pencil lettering that she did in the early 80s, which to talk about it now is really unremarkable because it's everywhere, but it's only everywhere because everyone copied Marion's pencil lettering at that time, because no one had ever seen anything so informal and natural, just like the scribbles that you would do while you were doodling on the phone, except that it was, hand typography. And a large part of her career has been being commissioned for her lettering. So yeah, it's a huge market. Go and have a look and you'll feel, well, hopefully you'll realise you're already there. You're doing what you need to do. It's just a matter of showcasing it.
I'm thinking of some examples. There's Johnny Hanna. He's done some great book covers that are all hand-drawn typography. And what's he called? Rob Ryan. Ryan. He does a lot of typography, lots of book covers. He did the famous Louis de Bernier one.
Yes.
There's some brilliant illustrators who do text, aren't there?
I feel like in America, lettering is a huge thing, isn't it? can't think of any names at all.
Yeah.
But there are lots of them.
You're 9 months pregnant.
People draw pictures, you know. I've seen it on the internet.
You could get a job doing that. But there again, I'm not pregnant and I can't think of another letterer. We've got our favourites. And in fact, Johnny, Hannah and Marion are on our Freak Flag course talking about what they do and how they came to do it. So it's that could be a place to look.
Yeah. The next question. This one says it's a question about the gap between what you want to make and what you do make. So we often quote Ira Glass's quote on the gap between what you're making and the fact that you've got really good taste. Maybe we'll post that quote in the description. Save me.
It's along the lines of when you're starting out, you want to be an artist or an illustrator or a writer or whatever because you have really good taste and you want to attain that. You want to get up to that level. But when you start out, you don't have it yet. And so there's a gap, isn't there?
Yes. So this question asker says, the gap between what you want to make and what you do make, about making work you're disappointed in, about finding your style, about doing the work that comes easily. Do you have to fall in love with or accept the work that comes most easily? Do you just have to learn to like it, or will it change? And can you edge your work closer to work that you like without feeling dishonest?
Well, there's so many. This is such an interesting question because there's a lot of moral and ethical stuff in there about integrity. Like, yeah, you look at work you really like, and there is a point where the electric fence will go off if you get any closer to copying them. We always talk about, you say, Helen, trying the hat on. Sometimes you can try someone's hat on privately, for a week.
Briefly.
Yeah, and don't put it out there and try and sell your work. But you're going through the motions to find out how that person used line or how they combine texture and colour. And that's a good activity to go through and discover it. But yeah, I think that finding your own way is ultimately the goal, isn't it? You can't.
I find it interesting because I'm thinking, like, is the work she's making lovely, but it only takes her a few minutes, and so she can't imagine it as a final illustration, or are her skills just not up to the place she wants it to be yet? I think she's asking that. Is she supposed to just accept it how it is? I think if you're not naturally enjoying your work and it's not how you want it to be, you should just keep going until you get there. I mean, we all make so much bad work, don't we? Millions and millions of bad drawings between the good ones. And I would say just keep going. And then suddenly you're going to do one you like. And that's going to make you happy for a week. And then look at that, stare at it, work out what you like about it and try for it again.
Yes. It's like using that as motivation to get to keep improving your skills and getting closer to the work you like, rather than resigning yourself to being like, I'm going to hate my work forever. Might as well get used to this.
And also it comes down to your self-esteem as well. You are maybe painting yourself here as a beginner who's making work that's not great, but perhaps other people around you think the work is amazing, but you think, oh, I'm really not that good. And is it your feeling about your own confidence that needs to change, or your own worth? Or are you genuinely saying, it's not that great because I'm at the beginning and I probably do need to keep working? And the only way it does improve, really, isn't it? Is challenging yourself and continuing to work, because I find that I don't make things that often that I go, wow, I just did that. But it happens. It's guaranteed. Every month or so, you'll do one small thing that makes you think,
that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
that's
really good.
That's great when that happens.
Yeah.
And maybe people think that when you're beginning, when you get to wherever there is, you're just making a constant flow of fabulous
consistently brilliant.
Well, sure, you're not.
Yeah.
No.
Also, I think the client or whoever the work's for, their bar is always set a bit lower than your own. So I know for me with my live illustration, graphic recording stuff, sometimes, well, a lot of the time, I don't really like the work, but it's very practical. It's for a reason. It ticks all the boxes that they want, and they're like blown away, so happy with it. And I'm like,
you're fitting the brief exactly because they want you to record their recording. You're doing it live. You're doing it really quick. It's a bit like Art Club when we did live Art Club, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're just reacting immediately, and what comes out. And so that is perfect. That's what they need.
Yeah. But then if it was like my private practice, like painting and drawing at home, I would probably do very different work. Like my Art Club work is completely different to my work. And I have sort of made peace with that. So if that is the sort of gap you're describing, maybe it is good to make peace with where you are. If it's
because if the work you're doing, the commissioned work, is accepted, you are doing a good job, and as an illustrator, that is what you're there to do. As an artist who's learning to please themselves or feel excited about your own creative potential, that's to be done in a different place. But it is work, and as long as your work is consistent and what you provide to your client consistently matches the work in your portfolio, then you're doing well.
If they're happy, I'm happy.
There's that thing about, there's a phrase, but I can't remember it. But it's about you do the best you can within your talents and the tools and the time that you have.
Yeah.
And so whatever you do with your talent, your tools, that amount of time, that's what you do. You do your best in that, and the results, whatever they are, that's it. You can only do that.
Yeah.
You can't expect more of yourself than that.
That's quite comforting, especially for those inclined to beat themselves up constantly about work. And I think it takes a long while to get past that self-sabotaging thing of, you're rubbish, that's not good enough. But like you say, you have to accept that you've got to stop work after a certain time. You can't be going on forever. And sometimes without a job, you can work on something till you absolutely kill it.
Yeah.
Or you think you've got so long to work on it that you could continually improve it. But in a commercial setting, you've just got to accept, and you sometimes internalize that as a 3-day job. You know exactly what that looks like and how much you can do, so you don't keep saying, I could do more, it could be better.
Actually, that's worth talking about, like from a mental health perspective. Like beating yourself up and telling yourself how rubbish you are is never going to get better results than being like, I'm doing my best, I'm doing a little bit every day, I'm topping up the tank of like my drawing practice. Because if you just beat yourself up all the time, you just feel rubbish about it and don't want to carry on.
I think at art college, that was a mindset we were all assumed to buy into. I think I paid subscriptions to that, didn't everyone else?
Tuition fee covers that.
Go along for a Friday night self-beating
What
up.
do you call that? This is terrible. Rip it up and try it again.
I think it's because our old art teacher, the famous Mr. Newby, God bless him, he used to, if you put a black outline around anything you drew with colour, he would take it and hold it under the tap and run water in front of the whole art class, which is why in colour theory workshops I was, don't put any black in your picture, you've made all those lovely colours and now you added the black, give it here, I'll put it under the tap for you. But he was right. I look back and I think, and he used to say things like, the black has just killed all the lovely colours you've made, you don't do that, and you don't outline things, which is also why I don't draw in line. I think Mr. Newby lives inside me.
I agree with him about not outlining things in black, because I like to use a dip pen and ink, but I always put my colour down first and then the line goes on after, because if you put your line down first you end up colouring in, and there's nothing worse.
Horrible.
Kill an image dead.
Yeah, if there's one takeaway from here, don't colour in a black outline.
You want some rules? We've got some rules.
It's on the one occasion where we've all agreed and found a good solid rule that doesn't include it depends.
Or if you want to like beat yourself up, we could record a podcast episode where it's just us saying horrible things about you. You call that an illustration? People might like that.
There's probably a market for BDSM illustration tuition. So how the next one, how do you achieve this? This is the good one. People always ask this. We always ask this. How do you achieve that same energy and excitement in drawings for illustration, i.e. imaginative drawings? I mean, how do you balance the energy with the more finished drawing? Is it about timing? Is it about the same timing and material constraints? I enjoy spending ages on some drawings and putting in lots of decorative detail, but it can make my images look ploddy. Is that a word? We'll use it. And I'd like to achieve the same energy as I have with my 15-minute observational stuff. Does that make sense? I mean, if you're working that long on something in decorative detail, you can really clog up a drawing so that there's no space, there's no light, no balance, no contrast, no energy.
What is it you call it? Noodling.
Noodling, yeah. Noodling is the word.
We did an art club on noodling and it was actually really good.
Just to disprove my point. I think if you intentionally noodle, you can get something really interesting. I mean, Wasn't Seurat just a tonal noodle, just rubbing the graphite over the paper for ages? Or Seurat, that's kind of a sort of noodling, but it's knowing the balance, isn't it? How much your image can take.
It's that thing I think of when you get a commission. If you get a commission and you're being paid money, you think, oh well, I better make sure it takes as long as it can so that it looks like it's worth it.
I must work as hard as possible to earn it
until I'm suffering and I can't bear it anymore, and then it's finished.
Yeah. Or just put lots and lots of marks on it so it looks like mark per mark. It's value for money, which are all dreadful ideas. And that goes back to the Marion thing again. At that time, when Marion Descharges was doing quick pencil drawings or typography and being paid quite handsomely for it, we were all utterly confused. It was like a kind of, I can't think of the word. She had a sense of her own value, and she knew that these design decisions were worth it because it had taken a long while to do something that simple with that kind of confidence. And when that was set against beautiful typography or laid in a graphic context, it just looked amazing. But it takes guts to do that.
It's confidence, isn't it?
A lot of it's confidence, I think.
Something small and spontaneous is of complete equal value.
Well, sometimes when you do a rough drawing, you can love the rough drawing, and then you try and you use the horrible words final artwork out of it, and it ruins it.
Yeah.
So it's like finding some way of keeping all that energy in that first instinctive drawing in the final artwork. There's all sorts of tricks for doing that. Like I if I'm not working digitally, if I'm working on paper, I might make a rough drawing that I love, but now I want to take it into colour for a book. And so I'll put the rough drawing on my light box. I put a piece of paper over the top with the light on so I can see the drawing underneath, the rough drawing underneath. But I make sure the light's just right so that I can't see it properly. Because if I can see it absolutely properly, then I can copy it very carefully, and then it'll become really laboured and you can see all the careful detail of copying. Whereas if the light isn't turned, if the light is right, I can only just see it. So I'll put my colour down and then I'll do the line over the top, and I'm sort of using the rough drawing as a guide, but I've still got all the energy of a brand new drawing. All that new energy is coming through my hand. There's loads of tricks like that, aren't there?
There's a Photoshop version, as there always is. There's a digital version of that.
I have a digital version. I turn my rough down to very, very, very pale, do all my colour, and then I do the line over the top where I can only just see the line drawing underneath to keep the energy.
But also, if you've done a thumbnail drawing like Sarah Dyer's thumbnails, for example, they're very small, and when you are in that unprecious situation of you kind of draw a square inch or something and then fill that little rough in with pencil, you've got a nice fat pencil mark in proportion to the space that you're drawing in. So that takes all the pressure off because you're not having to be very exact. And if you do 4 or 5 of those, one of those guaranteed will be the perfect rough. And you've got to scan that in, blow it up about 600 times. So if you're going from 1 inch to an A5 illustration, blow that right up in Photoshop and be very determined to copy the proportions that you've created in that rough. Don't try and improve things.
So use a thicker brush.
Either, you've got the line becomes thick if you're blowing it up that much. But it depends whether you draw with line or whether you're just doing colour next to colour. But you've just got to not get in there and clean things up too much. Stay with those big, bold, broad decisions that you made in a very natural, unpressurised rough.
Sometimes you can find ways to use that original rough drawing in the final artwork, scan it in, and then make your art digitally and actually keep that original drawing.
As part of it.
Is it Chris Horton does that?
Yes, I think so.
Like his rough's basically the finished thing.
Yeah.
He also then he said when he was blowing up small roughs and then the edge or the outline of his shapes, you naturally start to get inside them and interfere with them against your best intentions, and then it gets too cleaned up. So then he was doing collage, like tearing black paper to get. He was looking at his roughs and he was tearing the shape in black paper, but obviously larger because this is final artwork, but still trying to keep himself out of his own way, so he couldn't refine it too much, but keep that kind of natural instinct towards the shape. That
reminds me of Louise Lockhart printed Peanut, when she decided that she makes her work with collage, pieces of paper and scissors. Some of it is digital. When she'd done quite a lot of digital work, she realised that she was getting too good at it, and so she had to find a new obstacle to make it naive again. So she bought a really big clunky pair of scissors and cut out big pieces of paper so that it had the naivety again.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, isn't it? You can get in your own way, can't you? Yeah. Your sensible brain can jump in and spoil all the instinctive, intuitive stuff.
Even though you've got a guard up at the door going, I want this rough, messy line. Don't allow anyone in cleaning it up. The cleaner rushes in with the brush. It's like, oh, look at that messy edge. Let's sort that. And so your brain's in kind of combat with each other, trying to keep that human, organic, energetic mark that you made. But like you said, going back to the scale up your tools, I think, that is the other way of doing it. If you suddenly have to repeat something you've done on a small thumbnail and you're not going to scan it in Photoshop, but you're going to physically draw it again, scale up the tool. So the big graphite sticks or fat brushes will do it. Because there's definitely something about the proportion of mark to the size of paper you're working on.
It's like setting your own constraints, isn't it, to make it rough and wobbly, even though it's the finished, I'm using inverted commas, it's the finished artwork. Try to trick yourself into forgetting it's finished artwork. Yeah. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
I think it's the sober way of doing it. In the history of art, most people waited till they were drunk to replicate those passionate, unself-conscious paintings. Obviously, we can't possibly allow that in our commercial lives. So, you've got to find ways, either blunt scissors or ripping things up or
opium.
Dodgy brushes or what?
Opium. Absinthe. Oh, that's all it is.
Yeah, you need obstacles, you're right, to create that naivety.
And the timer, we're always going on about the timer, but setting yourself a time limit does help. It's
really good to set the timer and do a whole load of drawings that are for nothing, for no reason. Set the timer, do 10, 30-second drawings or something, and that's it. Your brain's switched into playful mode and you're ready to go in that nice, loose, you've got all the rubbish out of the way, you're messing about now. It's like mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can feel it because you start enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
And you're not like, oh my God, I'm going to do this final thing.
Yeah. So it's probably about having some cheap art materials, loads of supplies of paper, so preciousness isn't an issue.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of illustrators loathe to say, but Marion again showed me how she worked on her Bob the Crow books. And it's a simple ink drawn character, but there's loads of sheets of paper with Bob's body, head, arms, legs, whole body, so that if there's loads of them, you can just cut them up and put them together in Photoshop, so that you don't say to yourself, right, I'm going for the final artwork now. We've got 3 hours to try and bash this out. Just do loads of the same thing and pick the best one. And that way you're giving yourself lots of options.
Yeah.
But then you can't really say that if the work that you do is more like Angela Barrett.
Yeah.
How do you think someone
she still keeps freshness, even though it's watercolour and it's layer on layer on layer, she still keeps some area where the white paper really shines through. She's got such a light touch.
I bet she's having fun. She'd be enjoying herself.
Yeah, going back to someone like Angela Barrett, whose work is quite refined and meticulous, that's not going to be done in 20 minutes or even 3 hours.
It'll be days, probably days, I imagine. But she absolutely knows to keep that white paper shining through in some parts of the painting. She's still carefully judging what would be too much, isn't she?
I bet she has a word with herself.
I bet she does.
Quite often.
Yeah.
Do you think she has a safe word when she's overworking it?
She'll be like, oh, come on, Angela. Step away.
Yeah, so I think this thing about staying loose or staying fresh isn't a judgment on making work that looks like it's quickly drawn with a brush. It's more than... this covers work that takes you days and days to work and looks very finished and detailed. That work needs a really light touch as well, so that you don't end up making it stodgy.
Yeah. We probably need to get someone on who works like that, who's prepared to talk about how you balance a long piece of work and still keep the life in it. That's a lot of self-knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah. That'd be fascinating as well, because I think people assume, because we talk about using a timer, working quickly, keeping it loose, that we just think the only good work is really fast, loose, wobbly work. But it's not at all the case. It just so happens that's a really effective way of keeping the life in something.
It's really good, isn't it? If you've not drawn for a long time, those ways what the good ship talk about a lot, which is the stuff we do at Art Club, the quick time drawings. It's a really good warm-up for making other types of work. It's a really good way of getting back into drawing if you've had a break from it for a while.
Oh.
It's not a judgment as in this is the only kind of work you should be making. It's just it's very, very useful to get into all sorts of other way of working.
Yeah.
Well, I'm representing the long-laboured work for good shit. You look at those maps. I can't believe I do those things because I liked quick stuff, I thought. I like to work in a spontaneous way. But now sometimes I look at the maps and I think, did I make those? That's really weird. That's not what I thought I would do. But being digital, you can take things out and remove things when they get too heavy and they're about to topple over because they're too laboured. I don't know how you do it with traditional analogue media. But yeah, there's something enjoyable when you know you've got it before it's about to topple over under the strain of its own weight.
It's like having the confidence to go, does it look generally all right now? Yeah, it does, right, I'm going to stop. Yeah. Because if you carry on past that point of actually when you have a quick glance at it, yeah, it looks great. If you carry on, you can really kill it. It's like confidence to stop just before it's ready.
Yeah.
And if you make enough work like that, you'll know what that point is. I think it's really difficult when you've just started and you don't know where your parameters are. Should you go a lot further? Is this enough? The only way through it is working. I'm just going to add this bit. It just needs this. And then before you know it, you've smudged the whole thing. Or it's just full of everything that doesn't need to. When I used to paint, when I was a painter, I would often do that. I do it less now. Maybe obviously it's experience and time, but I'm sure being digital helps because you can unpick and remove chunks.
I feel like that was A-level art for me. It was just overworking everything.
Well, you're supposed to. You're incentivized to overwork.
At school, it was very much like for your exam, it was like 8 hours spend 8 hours on your work. That's so long.
Yeah.
So by the end of the 8 hours, you're exhausted. Your work's totally overworked and not even good anymore. Might have been good at like hour 2.5.
Yeah, but now we're spending all that time attempting to unpick everything we were taught about what makes a good drawing.
I really remember doing A-level, being at, I went to a sixth form college to do my A-levels, and I can remember one teacher saying to me, Helen, you work too quickly, you have to slow down. And the other teacher disagreeing, and they had a row while I just sat there in silence.
That's life. That's like everyone's creative brain.
That's basically like an illustrator attending their child's parent-teacher with the art teacher. I'm surprised there's not blood on the floor. Because most creative people are in complete contrast to the school, where we've just described GCSE and A-level art seems to be designed to make you as uncreative as possible.
Squeeze it out of you.
Yeah. Like every sketchbook page has got to be complete and finished. And so many kids are taught that halfway through degree, it's really hard to get them to understand this is not what a sketchbook's for. This is for working out all the problems. No one will see it. Yeah. And it's only for your brain to make associations and progress through it. It's not to make lovely pictures in a sketchbook.
Yeah. It doesn't even have to be in a sketchbook. If you've got like trauma from sketchbooks at school, you can use loose sheets of paper and just kind of keep them together.
Yeah, and if you make enough work, one of those will be the final piece, even if it's on photocopy paper. Yeah. If that's scanned and printed well in a magazine, it doesn't matter that it's not on Arsh's watercolour paper.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of worry about that. Is that when you're being paid to do an illustration, you have to use professional materials. But often the best materials are not professional materials. I used to get Mary's watercolours when I was a teenager, and they were little tiny tubes of paint, really, really cheap in the cheap shop in Darlington. But the pigments in them were amazing. They were brilliant. I've still got paintings now that I did with those. And they're totally publishable. You don't have to use the best paper. It can be scary, can't it? To use a piece of expensive paper.
And then the same digitally. It's, memory. If I go, all right, let's make it at full size, 330 DPI. Here we go, roll up your sleeves. Oh no, this is the final artwork.
It's those words again, final artwork. There's nothing more scary.
And it's already 30 megabytes and you haven't even put a mark on it.
Oh, it's terrible.
And that mindset is an absolute replication of pulling out your best watercolour paper and your best pigments and going, right, let's begin. You've got to trick yourself into doing this stuff.
Anything you can do to reduce the pressure in your brain.
Yeah, draw on your bed.
Yeah.
Like if your desk is giving you palpitations, do it on your sofa or on your bed.
Or a weird time of day when you sort of not awake
catch yourself off guard.
Yeah.
Work in your pajamas.
Dance like nobody's watching.
Put your favourite music on really, really loud, so you're just too busy enjoying the music to like think about how this drawing's going to go wrong.
I often think about how if I'm about to draw something and it might be a difficult posture, I won't think about how the human body works and what the posture is. I think, how does it feel to make that? And I draw it as fast as I can while feeling what it would feel to move like that. And I often get a way better drawing like that than thinking, now where would the arm be? Where would the leg be? For me, often it's about the feeling and trying to remember the feeling as I'm drawing and not worrying about the final outcome.
Yeah, standing in the pose, is it? Taking the pose or running.
Making the face.
Yeah, totally making the face does it.
Yeah.
And sticks and ink.
Yeah.
Wobbly materials, wobbly paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time you do stick drawing at Art Club and I join anything, I always make drawings I like. There's something about the stick drawing makes you happy.
It's the unpredictable, lovely, wobbly, juicy lines.
They're so graphic, aren't they?
Yeah. I think that might be every single bit of advice we've ever had about trying to keep the energy in your work, all thrown into a giant pillowcase. I hope someone was taking notes.
30 minutes of solid advice.
So, I think we're finished.
We're finished. Yeah.
Thank you for listening. If you've got a message in a bottle, you can send it to us. It's goodshipillo@gmail.com. Or if you want to learn more about the Good Ship, you can go to thegoodshipillustration.com. And we're on Instagram as well, at The Good Ship Illustration.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.